Hello and welcome to China Dispatches, a European Chamber podcast that shares on-the-ground insights from European business leaders and experts on doing business in China. I'm your host, Gao Rui. The European Chamber published its annual Business Confidence Survey in early May. Respondents reported that, alongside economic and geopolitical challenges, competition is also a key hurdle for their business in China. In today's episode, we will look at some of the survey's findings related to competition and discuss challenges for European companies competing with Chinese counterparts, causes for increasingly fierce competition in China, as well as provide suggestions for companies. I'm going to be joined by Jens Eskelund, President of the European Chamber, and Amy Niu, Vice Chair of Energy Working Group. Thank you very much for joining. In the Business Confidence Survey 2024, competition with Chinese privately owned enterprises was a top 3 business challenge for 14% of respondents. More than half of respondents reported that competitive factors had a negative impact on their company's 2023 net profit margins in China. And only 1 in 10 said that their profit margins benefited from competition. In economics, competition is generally regarded as a positive factor, believed to promote innovation, which ultimately results in better product offerings. Jens, is this true for European business in China in general?
Oh, absolutely. There are no doubts about it. I mean, competition, free and fair competition on a level playing field is an unqualified good. We do see free and fair competition as a powerful driver and historically as one of these forces that has been driven technological innovation and human progress. So we are big fans of competition, but it needs to be real competition. It needs to be free competition, fair competition, and competition on a level playing field. If that is the case, then we are all for it. And it is something that we time and again in our publications are encouraging. We need to make sure when we have a market that competition actually works. And when competition works, it is, in our mind, an unqualified good.
So that is the ideal situation. Can you also briefly introduce, is the current competition the kind that you just described?
I think there are certain issues. We are in a marketplace that functions in many ways, but there are also distortions that is having as a consequence that the market perhaps is not quite as fair and equal as the ideal situation that I described just before. We have a number of our companies, for example, that cannot participate in public procurement. And in China in particular, public procurement is a very, very big part of the Chinese economy. So clearly that is something that would give you a disadvantage. We are also seeing, and that is perhaps more in China's competition with other countries, that we have seen very significant support for the supply side towards investment into manufacturing, tax rebates, cheap capital. That is perhaps, this is something that we recognize is also often benefiting European companies, perhaps, but perhaps something that distorts the competition with companies in other countries that are seeking to export into China. We saw reported in our latest Business Confidence survey, which we released in May, that still 2/3 of our members are indicating to us that they're missing out of business opportunities because of red tape, because of lack of access to the market. So this is clearly something also that is being felt by a significant majority of our members as a hurdle towards fully utilizing the potential of the Chinese market. And in that respect, of course, leading to less than a perfect competition in this marketplace.
The report also shows that 42% of respondents have been losing market share to domestic competitors. Jens, in your opinion, what are the major challenges for European companies competing with Chinese companies?
Oh, I think it really depends on the type of industry you're in, and I think there are several kinds of competition that applies to different industries. I think first, there's a good kind of competition, and what we are seeing is that there are a number of Chinese companies that are simply just very, very good at what they're doing. And they are competitive because they are offering the best, most innovative products at the lowest price. That is all very, very well and good. But then we have, in some industries, we are seeing that European companies are not able to compete because they do not have access to the market. They are excluded from procurement, or there are requirements to the origin and that are country-specific to China that makes it very, very difficult for European companies to comply. And then we have areas where we are seeing typically industries where there is a high political focus on developing. It could be the so-called Big Three, where we have seen significant subsidies and political focus. The Big Three are new energy vehicles, it is solar and wind, and it's batteries, where we have seen there's been so much policy support that we have seen significant overcapacity, and as a consequence, a significant drop in the prices that companies are able to get in these areas. This has led both to margin squeezes, but also to low utilization of assets and other things that we would typically associate with overcapacity. So I think really it's a mix of these, some Chinese companies being very, very good. In other instances that we see lack of market access, and a third one where we see policy initiatives, for example, in the form of subsidies, twisting market conditions, creating an uneven playing field.
Amy, as Jens used energy industry as example already, do you have anything to add from your background energy sector and any other challenges facing your industry?
Well, in European companies in the energy industry, they face actually several kinds of competition in China. First, there's a considerable cost pressure. Chinese company benefits from the lower production cost due to the economics of scale from their own origin. And the large domestic market allows Chinese firms to operate more efficiently, reducing the per unit production cost, while our European companies often rely on a mix of local and international suppliers. And they generally incur higher cost of environmental sustainability due to strict risk regulations and standards they are required to follow, and both from the European Union and international framework. Another factor would be the aggressive price strategy implied by many Chinese companies capture the market share and sales volume this year, particularly in the new energy sector. And take the EV market, for example. This has led to intense price competition and squeezing the profit margins for all players in the market. And also, technical advancements in China also pose a significant challenge. The Chinese government has set renewable energy as a strategic priority. Both Chinese government and Chinese company invest heavily in research and development, leading a rapid innovation in renewable energy technologies. For example, the project like the world's first maritime renewable energy project, combining the deep sea floating and wind energy and also agriculture. And this allows them to produce high quality and innovative products at competitive prices in new energy sectors. And continuous invest in research and development helps Chinese companies maintain a technology edge. Also, lastly, with the post-pandemic recovery challenge, the business environment has strengthened markedly as geopolitical tension rise. Domestic and foreign restrictions on cross-border trade and investment have also intensified, potentially increased China and EU's urgencies in pursue its security. These factors require the European companies to remain flexible and carefully navigate changing policies and regulatory environment.
Although the Chinese government has already made pledges to improve domestic consumption, the proportion of respondents whose profitability is being negatively impacted by demand factors is still over half. Amy, is demand an issue for energy sector?
Well, I would say, for energy industry, we have a great market because China now is undergoing the energy transition. But this year, we do see most of our member companies in energy sector are under pressure from their business slower growth and profit margin dropping. When it comes to our sector, as you know, it has great demand driven by the AI, electrification, and also digitalization trends. Given the increasing electricity demand, it has a very high demand for energy. But the post-pandemic recovery challenge and also China's economic growth has declined a bit, which is from 5.2% in 2023 to 4.6% in 2024. The later slowdown in the profit growth is mainly due to the weak recovery and industry cycle in our market demand relative to the supplier. So when the overall price of industrial product are still in decline, while our production and operating costs have increased slightly. So this slowdown impact the domestic demand, affecting the revenue and profitability of European firms operating in China. So the rest, I would also mention this is very special for European companies. Our another challenge would be the limited access to green energy. Also, this is our advocacy focus this year for our chamber. As you know, in the chamber, so for European companies, we are very aggressive to comply with the strict EU regulatories and supply growing consumer demands for green products and service. Our members have to revise to the timeline or postpone our target for decarbonization due to we have target to move towards 100% renewable energy. But given the increasing green electricity demand, it still have great challenge for China's regional imbalance in green power demand and supplier. And China provides us with significant access to green energy, so they're doing a great job. But we need more. Much of the renewable generation capacity is located in the north and also west region of China. We have more needs in the east region, and government already recognize this challenge, and they are working to integrate the regional grid into the unified national market and facilitate the interprovincial transaction. Addressing these issues, I think will require the innovative solutions and collaborative efforts from both public and private sectors.
Jens, what kind of measures could be used to boost demand? And do you expect the demand will pick up in the year ahead?
I think you are touching on something fundamental. And what we see, unfortunately, is that both investment into new manufacturing and manufacturing output is growing faster than consumption. And until we have a situation where the growth in consumption is more or less the same as the growth in manufacturing output, then we are probably going to continue to see a squeeze on profits in many industries. China is today already by far the world's largest exporter, and China is actually these days continuing to grow on its export relative to the rest of the world, in spite of the fact everyone is talking about deglobalization, talking about nearshoring, friendshoring, onshoring, and so on. But in reality, when we look at the data, China is actually continuing to grow its share of global export. But that is going to become harder because the world simply cannot continue to absorb an unlimited increase in export. And therefore, it's critically important that China finds ways to increase also domestic consumption. So it becomes more equal, that you begin to see consumption numbers growing at the same level as manufacturing output numbers. Some of the things that needs to happen is that some of all the investment that we see going into new manufacturing right now is being reallocated to the demand side. What we think is very much the case right now is that there is perhaps a little bit of lack of confidence now amongst Chinese consumers. We can see now that the savings rate is actually at an all-time high. So it's not because people don't have money, but it's perhaps more a reluctance to spend. And some of the things we think that are keeping people away from spending is, nervousness about the outlook for real estate. We know that Chinese people on average have around 70% of their savings tied up in real estate. If you don't know how that asset is going to perform in the future, then perhaps you'll be a little bit more cautious about your spending. We also have people being perhaps concerned about retirement pensions, about elderly care, about healthcare, about education. So maybe invest a little bit in some of these areas. What can you do to take some of these worries away from people, making sure that they feel, should something happen to me or my family, I will actually, to some extent, be covered. It will be possible for me to find ways to ensure that, not everything is lost if I have to undergo a big operation or something like that. So sort of recreating a little bit of that confidence, creating stability in the real estate market, and also contribute towards ensuring that people are getting the confidence back that, that it's actually safe to go out and spend some of these savings and not just stuffing it all in the mattress, saving up for a rainy day.
The survey indicated that weak demand also exacerbated the issue of overcapacity, which was observed by over a third of respondents in their respective industries in 2023. Could you give some examples of the industries that are experiencing overcapacity?
I think now Amy is representing the energy working group. I think this is one of these areas where we are really seeing it. We have seen over the past 2 years that prices of solar panels have dropped 60-70%. We see the same with wind turbines. We have seen that within battery manufacturing, there's a huge underutilization of factories. We see it within EV manufacturing also. It was counted to 144 new energy vehicle brands now in China, and the vast majority of these are producing less than 10,000 vehicles per year. They are not making money. You need to get to somewhere, I heard, 300 to 500,000 before you begin to turn a profit. The fact that you only have a handful of companies actually making that number of vehicles, and that you have more than 100 companies most likely losing significant money on their vehicle production indicates to us that something is not right. And when you look at it from sort of societal perspective, having hundreds new energy vehicle manufacturers losing money hands over fist, that is just an enormous waste. And that is something, of course, that has implications for society, because China does need investment in many areas. And if you have this waste going into hundreds of vehicle manufacturers, that has a cost to it for China's society. So what we hope, of course, is that capital allocation will be more rational and will not be excessive in the sense that it creates all these companies for whom there is no conceivable market available now and in the future.
Amy, do you have anything to add in terms of the overcapacity phenomenon in the energy sector?
Well, for China's national strategy is to achieve peak levels by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. In response to that, China has embarked on ambitious path towards net zero. The strong government policies, regulations that incentive the investment in our renewable energy and promote sustainable practice. This has been driven by rapid industrialization, particularly in manufacturing sector. In our energy sector, China has installed 1,180 gigawatt of wind and solar capacity as of the end of June, this 2024, and contributes the renewable energy already reached the grid parity. But the speed of building power grids is difficult to keep up with the growth of new energy sources. So an imbalance of supply and demand in different regions. So the challenge of the grid capacity is supposed to be the near term. And the green energy currently requires the necessity of flexible resource development. But for us, lack of demand in domestic market, the European companies face the low margin environment. Another thing we see in the battery market, they move too fast. Like Jens mentioned, the technology goes so quickly. So not long after the goals of the previous generation were put into production, the new generation of technology has already come out. So replace the old one, which has to exist the market. So it's a little bit, we feeling like waste, but we're looking forward this could be have more margin for the market.
How that overcapacity phenomenon in energy sector affect European companies here?
Well, mostly for us is making us have facing the low margin environment. I mean, we are in the whole same industry, so this is the environment.
Jens, how does overcapacity affect European companies operating in China from a cross-industry perspective? And how does it affect China or the Chinese economy? Also, what are some of the spillover effects of China's overcapacity in other countries?
Generally, what we see is that a significant number of our companies, they have been losing market share because prices have dropped and profits sometimes have turned negative. I should say that it's not a universal phenomenon. I think we've seen 42% of our members dropping market shares, but we've also seen 29% of our members actually their market share. So yes, while we have pretty much across the board companies being squeezed on their market share, we actually also have some companies that are growing. But what we are seeing more generally is that companies are being squeezed on their margins, profits are dropping, and I think what is concerning is that profits are dropping generally, not within all industries, but when we look across all of our members, profit levels in China now have fallen relative to the global average. And that, of course, makes China less competitive relative to other countries. So it says something about that when you look at the domestic market here in China, that it has actually become harder to make money for European companies. And then the next question, of course, becomes, is it then becoming more attractive to begin in other markets where perhaps your profit levels are higher than they are in China? Why would you invest in a market where you don't get the best return? So I think in that sense, it is something that is beginning to impact investment behaviors in China also. One thing that concerns us a bit is that when we see that manufacturing output in China is growing faster than consumption in China, it means that a lot of that excess manufacturing needs to get exported. And that is, as we see it today, one of the root causes of the trade tension that we see today, that because of all that surplus manufacturing is being exported, that is putting economies under pressure, not just in Europe, but also in Latin America and in Southeast Asia and other places. And there will be a reaction when a lot of that surplus is being exported. And you can say in a perfect world, if this was manufactured under conditions of really free, fair, and level playing field competition, then perhaps it's not so much of an issue. But to the extent that it's a product of a sort of deliberate allocation of resources towards the supply side and deliberate allocation of resources towards ever more manufacturing for which there is no real demand, then we should expect countries to react. And we're beginning to see it. We have seen a number of investigations in Europe, but we have also seen in Southeast Asia countries speaking up against what they see as a very sharp increase in exports from China, also in Latin America. So we think it's important also that China keeps an eye on how is this affecting trade ties. And as we saw in June, China had an all-time high trade surplus. In just 1 month, China achieved a trade surplus of $99 billion. So it seems that something is out of equilibrium right now, and that the trade surplus now has reached a level where you need to ask yourself, is something a little out of balance? Do we need to allocate more to the demand side? Should we try to see if it's possible for the local domestic market to absorb more of that manufacturing? That would certainly take some of the tension out that we see now between China and some of China's main trade partners. It would also create additional opportunities for domestic Chinese companies manufacturing for the Chinese market, but of course also for Europe and other foreign companies that are in China for China.
Looking forward, 61% of respondents expect competitive pressure to intensify over the next 2 years, the highest on record. With the proportion of those who are confident that they will prevail against the competition sinking below 10% for the first time. Amy, from energy perspective, how do you assess the outlook regarding competitive pressure facing European companies in China in the long run?
I think it will get better. We see great opportunities actually. China is continue to in transition to low carbon economy and green energy transition. This requires the high quality and energy efficiency product. And European companies can offer great support for Chinese green energy transition, which including advanced technology, expertise in energy efficiency, sustainable financing, even policy insights, and a strong ESG practice. And we are also very excited that the third plenary section aimed to accelerate the construction of a new energy system to better promote green transition. This will release a large market for our energy sector.
What are your suggestions to European companies already in China and to those companies who are considering entering the Chinese market?
Well, for European companies in China, it is crucial to dip your roots in China and make long-term commitment to the Chinese market. The China being such a large market is diverse. It's important to tailor our products and service to meet the specific needs and preference of the Chinese market to ensure the better market adoption. And for those who are considering entering in market, as I mentioned earlier, the government indicates a favorable outlook for foreign companies, particularly those that can contribute to and benefit from China's push towards the technical advancement, innovation, sustainable development, and companies specialize on that. There's no doubt this will be a great opportunity to you.
Jens, same questions to you from a cross-industry perspective.
I share the same fundamental outlook on the growth potential in China as Amy does. I think there is still significant potential for European companies in China in the longer term. I do think, however, in the near term, within the next 2 years, it will continue to be difficult. And I think this is also what our members have told us in the Business Confidence Survey. But I think the longer term potential is here. And also, indeed, we don't see European companies running for the exit here. I do, however, think that whether China realizes that longer-term potential for growth will depend, in no small measure, on policy decisions being taken today. Will China begin to invest in the demand side? Will China be looking at overcapacity and not continue allocating resources towards industries where already there's more than enough capacity? Will China continue to open up for foreign companies? Will foreign companies be allowed to participate to a higher extent in public procurement? So yes, the potential is there, but I think it's really within the Chinese government to facilitate that we actually get to utilize this potential. So that's what we are looking for now. That is signs that the Chinese government actually recognize some of these pain points and that China is committed to reforming and opening up and letting domestic, private, and foreign enterprises play a full role towards contributing to the domestic Chinese economy.
Recommendations for companies in China and planning to enter the Chinese market?
It's a term that we have been using before in the chamber, that China is for many, but not for all. So do your homework before you come out here. China is still, in many industries, a fantastically interesting market. And in many industries, China is today a technological leader. So a place that you need to be if you want to learn from the best and be where things are really happening. But do your homework, understand the market. And now there are so many resources that you can utilize. Here under, of course, also the EU Chamber of Commerce here in China. Become a member if you not already are. Do your homework. And also be prepared, as is the case in Europe, that there are ups and downs in the market.
The report that Jens just mentioned is published by the European Chamber. You can download the report from our website. I will also put a link in this episode's show notes. That's all for today. Thank you again, Jens and Amy, for joining. If you like our podcast, please subscribe to China Dispatches, recommend to your colleagues and friends, and share on social media. Also, we'd love to hear your feedback. You can find the contact details in the show notes. This is Gao Rui from China Dispatches. Thanks for listening.